Prince Aquastide, holding a surprised blonde woman named Lady Tiara-Rose in his arms. The scene then shifts to show Tiara-Rose suddenly collapsing while at school, and Aquastide is the one who swiftly catches her as she faints. Her fiancé, Prince Heartknights, rushes over looking concerned and calls out her name, but she is barely conscious. A lovely art page shows Aquastide and Tiara-Rose dancing together, while Heartknights and another woman, Akari, stand in the background of a fantasy kingdom filled with floating sweets. Tiara-Rose then stands alone in her school uniform, looking dazed as she suddenly recovers memories of her past life. She remembers being a young Japanese girl playing an otome game on her computer. Her past self is shown holding the game's case, excited that she finally cleared the route for the character, Heartknights, and got a new CG image. Tiara-Rose realizes with a shock that these are her memories from a previous life. She understands with a blush that she has been reborn into the world of that exact otome game, Ring of Lapis Lazuli. It was a super popular game that she loved, and its setting is the kingdom of Lapis Lazuli, as shown on the game's box art featuring Prince Heartknights. Tiara-Rose reflects on her situation, realizing she was not reborn as the game's heroine. Unfortunately, she was reincarnated as the story's rival, the evil villainous Tiara-Rose Lapis Clementil, who is the prince's fiancée. She knows the heroine's charms are very powerful and laments that if she were the heroine, she would be guaranteed a happy ending. She looks over at the heroine, Akari, and realizes that her situation is dire. Akari transferred to their school 2 years ago, and today is the day right before the graduation party, which serves as the game's final ending event. Tiara-Rose panics, understanding that it is far too late to escape her fate. She visualizes the villainous bad end scenario from the game, where Prince Heartknights publicly breaks their engagement, condemning her. Later, Tiara-Rose wakes up in the school's infirmary and is shocked to see Prince Heartknights himself standing by her bed. He is Heartknights Lapis Lazuli Lactimoth, the first prince of the kingdom and the main character from the game. Her heart pounds at seeing the character she used to play, but he coldly tells her to stay in bed while he arranges for a carriage. Heartknights then turns to her with a cold expression and asks if she collapsed just to get his attention, accusingly noting that he has been spending a lot of time with Akari recently. Tiara-Rose is stunned by his words, realizing that the real-life Heartknights is completely different from the kind and loving character she knew from the game. She thinks to herself that this prince is scary and she cannot believe he is the same person who was so affectionate toward the player. She sits up in the bed, turning away from him, and says that she just isn't feeling well. She thanks him for his trouble, pointedly reminding him that she is, after all, his fiancée. Tiara-Rose internally fumes as she thinks about how Heartknights is currently being conquered by the heroine Akari. She finds the name Akari to be unusual, noting that it sounds Japanese. A sudden realization strikes her. In the Ring of Lapis Lazuli game, the player was not allowed to set the heroine's name. As Tiara-Rose coughs, she begins to wonder if Akari could also be a reincarnated person from Japan, just like her. Her thoughts are interrupted when Heartknights informs her that he has another engagement and will not be able to escort her to the graduation party tomorrow. He looks at her with cold, uncaring eyes. Tiara-Rose understands this means she will have to attend the party all alone, without her own fiancé by her side. She puts on a polite smile and tells him that it isn't her place to stand in his way. Heartknights seems surprised that she agreed so quickly, while Tiara-Rose internally fumes about how humiliating this is. She thinks that the original Tiara-Rose from the game would have rightfully scolded him, telling him that a crown prince must not engage in such shameful and thoughtless behavior. Heartknights merely says that her assent saves him a lot of trouble and reminds her that he had warned her about her behavior before. He stands up to leave, stating he has an engagement he can't get out of. As he clicks the door shut, Tiara-Rose is left alone in the room, feeling that her voice no longer reaches him and that tomorrow's ending is already decided. Lying in the infirmary bed, Tiara-Rose sighs, filled with dread. She knows that if the next day follows the game's scenario, she will arrive at the party alone. Heartknights and Akari will be waiting for her, and then the condemnation event will begin. She wonders how they plan to condemn her, as she doesn't believe her actions were that bad. She quickly realizes it must be because of her nagging behavior. In her effort to keep the heroine from stealing her prince, Tiara-Rose had been insistent on confronting Akari. She remembers an evening party where she scolded Akari, telling her that she shouldn't dance with a man who isn't her fiancé more than twice. She also recalls another time she warned Akari about touching a man who already had a fiancé. Tiara-Rose reflects that while her words may have been harsh, she was simply following the rules of their society. As the daughter of a powerful duke set to inherit the Lapis name, she felt it was her duty to give warnings to the daughter of a lower-ranking earl. Tiara Rose thinks about her strict upbringing, as she was educated since childhood to one day become queen. She remembers her father, the prime minister, telling her with a serious face that if her future husband, the prince, ever started to continue down the wrong path, it was her duty to correct him. With a look of distress, Tiara Rose realizes that she was only acting as a proper fiancée should and that her harsh words were just her way of showing her love for Heart Knights. This is something she only understood after being reborn as Tiara Rose, but it seems he never understood her true intentions at all. She sits up in bed, shaking, and briefly considers skipping the graduation party entirely. However, she quickly dismisses the idea, knowing it would be improper for the daughter of a duke, especially one set to inherit the Lapis name, not to attend such an important event. Tiara Rose worries about causing trouble for her kind parents, who are shown smiling warmly with her in a fond memory. She then tries to remember what fate befell the villainess in the game's bad ending. She suddenly recalls the game's credits, which stated that Lady Tiara Rose was to be banished from the kingdom. A wave of relief washes over her. As long as it isn't a death sentence, she feels she can be fine. She begins to imagine a new life, picturing herself falling in love and living as a commoner. A small smile appears on her face as she thinks she might actually be happy. After all, she was a commoner in her former life, so she knows she'll be all right. She decides this future is much better than marrying that prince, which she bets would have been one long parade of miseries. Gazing out the infirmary window, Tiara Rose thinks about her favorite game character, Heart Knights. She reminds herself that the real man is not the kind person from the game. He is a different, colder person. As she wonders what will happen tomorrow, she hears a knock at the door. A voice from outside informs Lady Tiara Rose that her carriage has arrived. She thanks them, her resolve now firm. She decides she will go to the party tomorrow, accept the annulment of their engagement, and then quietly leave. The story then rewinds for a moment to introduce Prince Akuyaku Marinforest, the crown prince of the neighboring kingdom. He is shown watching Tiara Rose from a distance, thinking that she is within his reach and wishing he could just talk to her or reach out his hand. The scene snaps back to the present moment, showing Tiara Rose's collapse again. The crowd chatters in confusion, and Heart Knights calls out, "Tiara?" as she wobbles and struggles to stand. Tiara Rose staggers, clutching her head in pain. Onlookers, including Akari, cry out in alarm as Tiara Rose begins to fall forward. But before she can hit the floor, Prince Akuyaku lunges forward, catching her firmly in his arms. He then swoops Tiara Rose up into a princess carry and announces to the stunned room that he is taking her to the infirmary. As he walks past the other students, he wonders what could have possibly happened. He knows Tiara Rose is a healthy girl who always makes an effort to smile, so for her to suddenly collapse like this is very strange. As he carries her, Akuyaku considers the immense pressure she must be under as the crown prince's fiancée. However, he dismisses this as the only reason, thinking that she is a tough young woman. His thoughts then turn to the recent rumors about the female transfer student, Akari, and how intimate she has become with Prince Heart Knights. Akuyaku thinks about the gossip swirling around the school, suggesting that Heart Knights might cast aside his fiancée, Tiara Rose, and take Akari as his wife instead. Akuyaku muses that if those rumors were true, then there would be nothing standing in the way of him proposing to Tiara Rose himself. He arrives at the infirmary and gently lays Tiara Rose down on one of the beds. He knows that if he, the crown prince of Marinforest, a kingdom larger and more powerful than Lapis, desired it, the preparations for their marriage would be completed swiftly. He thinks that while he doesn't intend to ignore her wishes, he would be prepared to proceed even if she resists. He closes the infirmary door, thinking to himself that this is the first time he has ever been able to touch his beloved. He knows his life as a student here will end with graduation tomorrow. The chapter ends with Akuyaku looking at his hands, thinking that these flighty feelings will soon settle down, just as everyone knows they must. Tiara Rose in her room, sighing as she looks out the window. It has been one day since she regained her memories of being the villainess in this game world, and today is the fateful graduation party, which serves as the game's ending. Her lady-in-waiting, Philin, calls her name and asks if Tiara Rose is certain she doesn't want to ask her father for an escort. Philin reminds her that it is customary to be escorted by a relative if one lacks a partner, and arriving all alone would be very difficult. Tiara Rose, while stirring her tea, gently declines, explaining that her father, the counselor, will be busy attending to the king and she doesn't wish to bother him. She internally reflects that her father is a serious helicopter parent, who would fly into a fit of rage if he saw her arrive alone. Philin, looking deeply concerned, takes Tiararo's hands and says she can't help but worry, offering to listen if anything is troubling her. Tiararos smiles warmly at Philin, thanking her and saying that just having Philin on her side is enough. As she sits by the window, Tiararos steels herself, knowing that the villainous condemnation event, known as the graduation party, will soon begin. To cheer her up, Philin brightly announces that she has prepared some treats. Tiararos' spirits lift as she thinks about her love for sweets, a passion she had in her past life that remained even after being reborn. She believes that sweets have always made bad things better. While Philin pours her tea, Tiararos silently fumes about Prince Heartknights, wondering why he isn't escorting her. She muses that while he must have a reason, she won't forgive him for this. Just as she thinks this, Philin hears a knock at the door. Philin goes to answer it while Tiararos wonders if it's a message from her professor. She takes a bite of a delicious-looking treat and closes her eyes in bliss, but she is suddenly jolted when the door bursts open and someone shouts her name. It is the heroine, Lady Akari, who rushes in wearing a beautiful gown and asks if Tiararos is feeling okay. Philin immediately scolds Akari for entering so suddenly, but Tiararos politely greets her and thanks her for the concern. Akari smiles and explains that she has been worried ever since Tiararos collapsed in the classroom the day before. Tiararos admires Akari's cute and luxurious dress, thinking she looks angelic, just like a game heroine should. Akari then mentions that Sir Heartknights has also been very worried, calling him kind. Tiararos finds this odd, thinking it's only natural for one's fiancé to be worried. At that very moment, Prince Heartknights himself enters the room behind Akari. Tiararos immediately gives a formal curtsy, greeting him while internally noting that he has brought another woman to her room right before the party, even after claiming he couldn't escort her. Heartknights coldly asks if she is well enough to attend, stating that he only came because Akari was so worried about her. Akari beams at him, saying it's a relief Tiararos is okay, and Heartknights agrees. Tiararos is annoyed, thinking they're acting like a couple, and realizes they just came to ensure she would be present for her own condemnation. She confirms that she rested well and will be at the party. Tiararos looks at her fiancé, thinking that he seems to have free time after all, though she knows she cannot say this aloud. Tiararos then turns to her maid with a worried expression, asking Philin how long it will take to finish her preparations and if they still have time. Philin suddenly panics, realizing they must start immediately or they will be late. Hearing this, Heartknight says they will excuse themselves for coming at a bad time, while Akari feigns surprise that Tiararos isn't ready yet. As they leave, Heartknights apologizes for the rush, and Tiararos watches them go, thinking they are barely hiding their true intentions. The moment the door slams shut, Philin explodes with rage. She fumes about their audacious behavior, ranting about how His Majesty's tie and Lady Akari's ribbon were made of the exact same color and cloth, something Tiararos had noticed as well. Philin declares that Akari has clearly crossed the line. Tiararos calmly adds that she had warned Akari about such things many times, but the heroine tends to forget. Tiararos silently reflects that they are so insistent because if she isn't on time to the party, it will ruin their entire plan to condemn her. Philin continues to rant, wondering why the prince doesn't admonish Akari for being so disrespectful, and declares she can't bear the thought of her precious lady marrying that man, suggesting Tiararos should just break off the engagement herself. Tiararos hides a smile and teases Philin about saying such things, and they share a giggle. Tiararos then thinks to herself that Philin is right, as Heartknights will undoubtedly break the engagement that very night. Philin is surprised that Tiararos isn't scolding her as she usually would. When Tiararos thanks her and agrees with her, Philin begins to wonder if her lady doesn't want this engagement after all. Philin resolves to do whatever she can to make Tiararos happy, even considering reporting the prince's behavior to her father, though she simply asks her lady not to overdo it. Later, Tiararos stands alone in her beautiful evening gown before the grand doors of the ballroom. She thinks about how in the game, the villainess entered last. She had tried to avoid that fate, but everyone has already gone inside. She knows that as soon as she opens these doors, her condemnation event will finally begin. Philin watches her with tearful concern, but Tiararos turns and gives her a brave, reassuring smile. She tells Philin that she is fine and that she will see her later. Tiararos then turns back to the doors, taking a deep breath to steady her nerves. Tiararos enters the ballroom, and the announcer proclaims the arrival of Tiararos Lapis Clementil. The crowd immediately begins to chatter, wondering why she has arrived all alone. At the front of the room, she sees Prince Heartknights and Akari standing side by side, flanked by all the other male conquest targets from the game. As she walks forward, Tiara Rose thinks to herself that it has now truly begun. Heart Knights calls out her name as she approaches. Tiara Rose finds it strange that all the other male characters are present, as she never interacted with them, and briefly wonders if it's a game update. As the crowd whispers about who the woman beside the prince is, Heart Knights addresses Tiara Rose. He declares loudly that he is proclaiming the break-off of their engagement, here and now. Tiara Rose remains poised and calmly asks him to please state his reason. Heart Knights, looking surprised by her composure, scoffs and asks if she can possibly claim not to understand why, telling her to ask her own heart. Tiara Rose, standing tall before the king and her father who are watching from the throne, replies firmly that she has done nothing to be ashamed of. She adds that if he wishes to make another woman his queen, then he should be the one to make the proper preparations for it. Enraged, Heart Knights accuses her of making many comments about Akari's countryside origins. He turns to Akari, who has tears in her eyes, and protectively asks if she was frightened. Akari replies that she was, but she felt okay because Heart Knights was with her. Tiara Rose's father begins to tremble with rage at the accusation, but Tiara Rose mentally calms him. Another man, Cliff Ilderun, the Knight's platoon commander, speaks up, stating that many subjects like farmers live outside the capital and support the country, and he cannot forgive anyone who looks down on them. Tiara Rose plainly states that this was never the reason for her remarks and tells Heart Knights she still doesn't understand the accusation. Heart Knights insists, reminding her that she told Akari to kneel and don't dance with him. Tiara Rose explains that she said those things precisely because he is the crown prince, and it is only natural to show such courtesy and respect. She can't help but think that the Heart Knights from the game was much smarter than this. Heart Knight seems to accept her point about kneeling but then demands to know why she told Akari not to dance with him. Tiara Rose explains that her warning was because Akari had danced with him more than twice. She asks the prince if he truly does not know the meaning of that. In her mind, she recounts the custom. Dancing with the same man twice signifies an engagement, while dancing 3 times is reserved only for married couples. She had also warned Akari about etiquette, such as kneeling when first meeting royalty, because Akari was unfamiliar with their customs. Tiara Rose presses her point, describing how Akari asked him to dance and they did so twice, right in front of her. She asks him if he understands how humiliating it was for him to so obviously favor Akari over his own fiancée, and asks if he can truly fault her behavior. Heart Knights counters by stating that Akari always told him Tiara Rose had viciously attacked her. Tiara Rose looks at him in disbelief, asking if he truly believes she is that kind of person. She immediately realizes from his expression that he never once tried to verify Akari's claims. Tiara Rose then delivers a critical blow, stating that she and Lady Akari were never once alone together. There were always other ladies present with them. Heart Knights is visibly shocked, stammering as he asks if others were there. Tiara Rose asks if he didn't even bother to look into that. Guests in the crowd confirm her story, mentioning that Tiara Rose's followers were there, and Tiara Rose mentally corrects them, thinking of Lady Fleuran and Lady Marietta as her dear friends. Seeing her story unravel, Akari bursts into tears, crying out that Tiara Rose is being vicious, and claiming she never said anything to hurt her feelings. This time, however, the crowd begins to whisper, questioning who the truly vicious one is and calling Akari's outburst an insult. Tiara Rose firmly tells Akari to refrain from speaking about her important friends in such a manner. She then turns back to Heart Knights with a sad, knowing smile, acknowledging that his heart belongs to Akari. She states that even so, none of her actions were cruel. She asks him to confirm his charge. He wishes to break their engagement because he believes she was cruel to Akari. Heart Knights hesitates, then agrees. Tiara Rose feels a small sense of relief, thinking this might be a more peaceful ending than the games, one where she isn't banished. But Heart Knights isn't finished. He declares that because her explanations were lacking, Akari was hurt all the same, and that her attitude towards the future queen cannot be excused. He then officially breaks the engagement, naming Akari as his new fiancée. Tiara Rose is stunned, thinking he must be an idiot. As she begins to tremble, knowing her father is about to explode, Heart Knights delivers the final blow. He proclaims Tiara Rose banished from the kingdom. Just as Tiara Rose is reeling from the shock, a clear voice rings out, commanding Prince Heart Knights to stop. A man's voice asks Heart Knights if his own words aren't far more vicious. The newcomer, Prince Aquasteed, walks toward Tiara Rose with a gentle smile. He tells her it's okay and to take heart, calling her the most beautiful woman there, one who has every right to be present. Tiara Rose is stunned, her trembling immediately stopping as she stares at him, unable to believe that help has come at the very last second. Prince Aquasteed steps between Tiararos and Heart Knights. Tiararos' heart thumps as she looks at him, thinking he is like a prince from a fairy tale. She has no idea what is happening, as this event was never in the game. Heart Knights angrily tells Aquasteed that this is none of his business, but Aquasteed calmly replies that he believes it is. He then turns to face Tiararos and asks her to confirm that she is, in fact, no longer engaged. Tiararos can only nod. Prince Aquasteed then smiles at her and, in front of the entire silent ballroom asks, "Would you become my queen?" The final panel shows Heart Knights and Akari looking completely shocked, with Akari crying out, "What?" right where the last one left off, as Prince Aquasteed asks Tiararos if she would become his queen. This sudden proposal leaves Akari screaming in shock while Tiararos herself is left completely confused. A title page for the third chapter shows Prince Heart Knights looking annoyed while sitting next to a calm Prince Aquasteed. Tiararos is stunned and tries to process this, thinking about who Prince Aquasteed Marine Forest is. She remembers he is the crown prince of the neighboring country, Marine Forest, who had been studying at her academy for a year. In her past life, she knew he wasn't a capture target in the first game but was announced as a main character for the sequel, a game she tragically died before getting to play. She recalls seeing his handsome character design and being interested in him, noting both his gentle smile and a hint of darkness. Back in the present, she is so confused she thinks it must be a dream, never imagining she would be interacting with the real person. Aquasteed acknowledges she must be shocked by his sudden request. Prince Aquasteed then kneels before a stunned Tiararos. He takes her hand and gently kisses it, asking her to please at least consider his proposal. Tiararos is blushing and panicking internally, her heart pounding, as she has no immunity to this kind of princely behavior. She thinks that even Prince Heart Knights never treated her this way. Her father, watching from the side, looks relieved and smiles, even nodding in approval. Tiararos, still blushing, manages to say, "Thank you," feeling a sense of happiness from the prince's sentiment. This moment is shattered by Akari, who yells for them to wait, muttering that this can't be happening. Akari stomps forward angrily, pointing out that Tiararos was Prince Heart Knights' fiancée just a moment ago, and now Aquasteed wants to make her his fiancée. She yells that she believes there is someone better for Prince Aqua, and Heart Knights is seen in the background muttering about her improper use of the prince's name. Akari then grabs Prince Aquasteed's arm, declaring that this isn't right. Heart Knights tries to warn her who she is touching, but Akari ignores him and tells Tiararos to let go of the prince. Tiararos, who isn't even touching him, thinks about how Akari's insolence could cause a diplomatic incident between their kingdoms. Aquasteed just shrugs Akari's hand off his arm and turns to Tiararos, thanking her for being concerned about him. Akari tries to argue, saying Prince Aqua is kind so he wouldn't be angry. Aquasteed cuts her off with a shockingly cold expression, and Akari flinches back in shock. He asks if she acts this way with the full knowledge that he is the first prince of the kingdom of Marine Forest. He calls her behavior insolence, and orders someone to take her away. Tiararos immediately steps forward and apologizes terribly to Prince Aquasteed, but he tells her to raise her head, as she has no need to apologize. Prince Heart Knights then steps up and bows deeply, offering his own apology. Aquasteed acknowledges him and says he will forgive him. As Akari is dragged away yelling, Tiararos feels pure joy at having been saved. Heart Knights then approaches, saying he must stop Tiararos from being rude, but Tiararos' father, the Marquis, cuts him off, asking Heart Knights if he intends to shame their country any further. The king himself then bows to Aquasteed, apologizing for the insult. Aquasteed graciously says he was the one who interfered. The king thanks him for his leniency, and then Aquasteed formally asks both the king and Marquis Clementil for permission to be engaged to Tiararos. The king smiles, saying it would be a wonderful bond between their countries, and adds that since his son bears responsibility for the incident, Tiararos' original engagement is entirely called off. Aquasteed asks Tiararos' father if he is worried, but the Marquis says he has heard much about the prince and is sure he will treat his daughter well. The Marquis explains that while he approved of the first engagement, his daughter was hurt, and so he wishes to respect her decision. Aquasteed smiles, calling him an ideal parent, and says he will visit again when Tiararos agrees. The king then dismisses Heart Knights, telling him to leave immediately, and tells Tiararos to go home and leave the rest to her father. He apologizes to the guests and invites them to enjoy the party. Aquasteed tells Tiararos he was too hasty and asks if she would spare some time to go out with him later. Tiararos, thinking he is very kind, gladly agrees. As they leave, Tiara Rose thinks that she escaped being banished, but now has a new, unexpected proposal from Prince Aquastede. He offers to escort her home, and she accepts, wondering what will happen now that the game's ending is finished. In the carriage, Tiara Rose is blushing and panicking, unable to think of what to say as she sits next to the prince from the sequel she never got to play. She glances at him, wondering why he would propose to her, the villain. Aquastede smiles, thinking he's so happy he could dance. Tiara Rose is mortified when she realizes he saw her looking at him, and she quickly apologizes. He tells her there is no need to apologize and says he is honored by her attention, asking if this means he can be hopeful. Tiara Rose's heart thumps, and she asks him why he proposed. He explains that he used to watch her from the library window while she was always reading. Tiara Rose is shocked, asking if he means behind the library. She thinks about how she used to read under a tree there to gain knowledge as the future queen and also so she could secretly eat sweets. Aquastede confirms, saying her expressions would change as she read, and he calls it so adorable. He describes how she would look serious one moment and then blush with a shy expression the next. He confesses that when she was moved to tears, he desperately wanted to hold her. Tiara Rose covers her face, begging him to forget that, but he gently takes her hand and says that would be impossible. He explains that watching her every day, he slowly became enthralled by her and asks to see more of her. He confesses he had to endure his feelings because she was Heart Knight's fiancée, and he couldn't steal another royal's bride. He had planned to just return home after his year of study and try to forget her. But today's graduation party was a stroke of luck. He admits he is a crown prince who fixed his gaze on one woman and waited for a chance to take her from her fiancé, and he was desperate not to lose that chance. He smiles and asks, "Am I not terrible?" Tiara Rose, blushing, says she isn't worried about the banishment, just happy to be going home. Aquastede then takes her hand again, asking her on a date and if she will make time. Tiara Rose's heart pounds as she realizes this is the kind of character he is. He teases that he might just abduct her. Tiara Rose smiles, saying she has plenty of time now that she has graduated and no longer has bridal training. He suggests a date 3 days from now, and Tiara Rose happily agrees, saying she looks forward to it. He promises to pick her up. As they ride, Tiara Rose worries if they can really be together and says she still can't believe he finds her favorable. He leans in close, whispering that he cannot help but like her when she is so adorable. Just as Tiara Rose is blushing, he pulls back with a smile, stating that, unfortunately, they have arrived at her mansion. In the final scene, Akari is shown confined in a room in a different castle, wondering why this is happening when she was supposed to be with Prince Aqua. A castle, where Prince Heart Knight stands outside a guarded door. He demands that the guard open the door, but the guard refuses, explaining that he is under strict orders from His Majesty to reject all visitors. Heart Knight, looking worried as he thinks of Akari, insists that he will not be long and just wants to see how she is doing. The guard hesitates, and Heart Knight pleads with him, saying he needs to speak with Akari to determine if he has made the wrong decision. He recalls the rumors that he had become a fool after getting involved with her while remembering her happy face. The guard finally relents and gives the prince just 10 minutes. Heart Knight thanks him as the door opens, and an overjoyed Akari runs to him with a bright smile, calling his name. With tears in her eyes, she exclaims that she was so bored, as she was not allowed to leave the room and had nothing to do. Heart Knight looks at her, his mind on Prince Aquastede's proposal to Tiara Rose, and he silently hopes that he is not being fooled by Akari. He explains to her that his engagement to Tiara Rose has been officially annulled, though he is not sure if Tiara Rose and Aquastede are engaged yet. Akari is shocked by this news, immediately assuming Tiara Rose must have been getting close to Aquastede from the very beginning. She then clutches Heart Knight's arm, wondering if everything Tiara Rose said at the party was true. She admits that she remembers Tiara Rose warning her harshly, but she felt safe because Heart Knight was always with her and she knew she could rely on him. Heart Knight gently pushes her away and asks if something is troubling her, offering to listen. He suspects that Tiara Rose may have said something to her, while Akari mutters to herself, annoyed that the villainous daughter is still involved after the main story has ended. Akari tearfully asks Heart Knight when they will finally be able to be together. He gently holds her face, telling her he also does not want things to end this way. He explains that he must speak with his father tonight and will tell her the outcome then, asking her to please bear with the situation. Akari agrees to wait. He tells her he has not seen Tiara Rose since the party and asks her to wait just a little longer. Akari's expression turns worried, and she suddenly changes the subject, urging Heart Knight to warn the king about Prince Aquastede. She claims she wants to protect Heart Knights before Tiara Rose does something horrible to him, just as she supposedly did to her. Heart Knights looks visibly tired, wishing Akari would focus more on their own difficult situation instead of Tiara Rose. The guard then opens the door, announcing that the prince's time is up. Heart Knights apologizes to Akari for being unreasonable and tells her he must leave now. He explains that while it will be hard, she must stay there a little longer, but a maid will be available to get her anything she needs. Akari pouts and begs him not to go, rushing toward him as he leaves. The guard blocks her path, and Heart Knights promises he will return before the door clicks shut. Later, Prince Heart Knights has a formal dinner with his father, the king. The king states that he heard Heart Knights visited Lady Akari. Heart Knights apologizes for his self-centered actions, insisting the visit was necessary. When the king asks if he learned anything from their conversation, Heart Knights looks down, thinking of Tiara Rose. He silently admits to himself that he should have listened more to what Tiara Rose had to say. He clenches his fist and confesses to his father that he didn't listen to Tiara Rose at all, and instead chose to believe everything Akari told him was the truth. The king sternly tells him that his actions were not commendable, neither as royalty nor as a human being, and reminds him that he had bound him and Tiara Rose together from a young age. Heart Knights looks at a memory of Akari telling him she is fond of him, and tells his father that he met Akari and thought hard about their relationship. The king firmly rebukes this, stating that Tiara Rose, in contrast, always understood her position and could truly see the kingdom, understanding the different roles of commoners and nobles. He explains that Tiara Rose watched over Heart Knights so steadfastly precisely because he was so important to her. Heart Knights, filled with regret, finally says he understands. He then remembers all the times Tiara Rose had corrected him, holding his hand when he was shaking, telling him they would be strong together, scolding him for running away from his studies, warning him not to misuse his authority over the knights, and even offering to help him master more languages. Heart Knights tells his father he understands now, and the king replies that this realization means he has finally matured. Heart Knights sadly admits that he didn't believe Tiara Rose and ended up hurting her deeply. 2 days after the party, Tiara Rose is shown sighing, bracing herself for what is to come. She and her father have been summoned by the king to a grand hall. She wonders why they are there, even having a fleeting, comical thought that the game's plot was revised and she is about to be thrown in prison. The king gestures to a long line of royal portraits, and Tiara Rose is startled. He reminds her that she and Heart Knights came to this hall once before, and she confirms it, remembering they were very young. She recalls the memory fondly. She and Heart Knights were both 10 years old, having been engaged since they were 6. They explored the castle with childish innocence, holding hands. Tiara Rose remembers worrying that they needed permission to enter the hall, but the young prince proudly told her it was fine because he, as a member of the royal family, permitted it. He then excitedly pointed to a portrait of his father, the king. Tiara Rose smiles at the memory, thinking how cute he was back then. The young prince had proclaimed that one day his own portrait would hang right next to his father's. The king confirms this memory, adding that Heart Knights had spoken of Tiara Rose with great pride that day. The king then grows serious and tells Tiara Rose that Heart Knight's portrait will now never be put up in this hall. Tiara Rose is stunned, instantly understanding that this decision means his right to ascend the throne has been revoked. The king then bows deeply to Tiara Rose, offering his truest apology for the terrible thing his son has done to her. Tiara Rose is shocked and immediately begs him to raise his head, insisting he has no need to apologize to her. The king thanks her for her generous heart and explains that they have thoroughly investigated the incident, concluding that she has endured far too much. Tiara Rose is still processing the punishment, asking if this really means Heart Knights is no longer the heir. The king confirms it, stating that Heart Knights is not worthy of this place. Despite everything, Tiara Rose worries that the punishment is too harsh, suggesting that they are only 16 and he will surely mature. The king is visibly moved by her kindness, noting that she still worries for him after all he did and telling her she was far too good for his son. With a look of finality, the king states that this is his decision and he will not change his mind. Tiara Rose understands it would be rude to argue further. The king's expression then softens into a smile as he suddenly changes the subject, asking Tiara Rose what her thoughts are concerning Prince Aquastide. Tiara Rose is so taken aback by the sudden shift in conversation that she blurts out, "What?" She immediately covers her mouth, flustered that she exclaimed without thinking. Her father joins in, explaining that Prince Aquastide will be returning to his country soon and that while he will respect her wishes, he wants to know how she truly feels. Tiara Rose blushes, looking at an image of Aquastide in her mind, and shyly says that he is much too good for someone like her. Both her father and the king seem to enjoy her flustered reaction, chuckling as they realize she clearly does not hate him. Tieroros' father then informs her that her engagement to Heart Knights is officially annulled and that Prince Aquistede has already submitted an official request for her hand in marriage. He praises Aquistede as a perceptive and great future king who defended her at the party, stating he is a better fit for her than Heart Knights. He adds that the prince is very fond of her and is willing to wait for her decision. Tieroros looks at the two men and says she is thankful, but she doesn't feel Aquistede would want her answer right now, so she must give it on another occasion. Her father accepts this. Tieroros looks at the kind king, thinking that she will most likely be leaving this country soon. The king simply smiles at her and says, "Please become happy." Back in her room, Tieroros feels exhausted. She sits on her bed, cuddling a fluffy pillow, and considers that becoming Aquistede's bride is the most likely path forward. She thinks that the game is now over and wonders if her life will finally become normal. However, she finds it hard to imagine that she, the game's villainess, would be chosen by the sequel's main love interest. Her heart begins to beat faster as she spins around her room. She reflects on the strange feeling of having her memories as Tieroros coexisting with her memories from Japan. She admits she was excited when Aquistede's character was first announced because he was exactly her type, and she deeply wishes she could have played that sequel. She then remembers that the heroine, Akari, also seemed to have an interest in Prince Aquistede. Tieroros pictures Akari holding onto Aquistede's arm and wonders why, since he wasn't even a capture target in the first game. She dismisses the thought, deciding she wouldn't want a heroine who is only interested in men with authority. Feeling tired, she decides to call it a night and walks toward her bed. Just then, she hears a distinct tapping sound coming from her window. She looks around, wondering if someone is playing a trick by throwing rocks, only to look down into her garden and see Prince Aquistede himself standing there, looking up at her. The perspective of Prince Aquistede, beginning at the Royal Lapis Lazuli Academy's graduation party. He is observing the event and thinks that something is wrong as he watches Prince Heart Knights and a student named Akari attempting to punish another girl. The girl they are trying to convict is Lady Tieroros, who Aquistede notes is Heart Knights' own betrothed. The prince is accusing her of having harassed Lady Akari. As Aquistede watches Tieroros stand with a composed expression while Akari cries next to Heart Knights, he thinks to himself, "I don't like this," and begins to step forward. He approaches King Alexander Lapis Lazuli Lactimith, who apologizes for his son causing trouble during a festive occasion. Aquistede smiles and assures him it is not a problem at all, while privately thinking that this is a godsend and a very favorable opportunity for him. Seizing the moment, Aquistede boldly requests the king's permission to ask for Lady Tieroros' hand in marriage, right there and then. The king is visibly shocked, asking Aquistede if he understands what he is saying by proposing to the fiancé of another country's crown prince. Aquistede reflects that while Heart Knights is trying to pass a sentence on his fiancée, Tieroros is known to be incredibly polite and gentle, and no one would disagree that the fault truly lies with Heart Knights. Before the king can say more, Tieroros' father, Prime Minister Schnaus Lapis Clementile, interjects and immediately gives Aquistede his permission. The king tells Schnaus that he can't just move on ahead with the decision, but the Prime Minister, identified as a doting father, insists that Tiara is his daughter and there should be no problem with him, her father, making that decision. He is internally annoyed, wondering what is happening to his adorable Tiara. Schnaus then politely tells Prince Aquistede that he is sure his daughter will be pleased to hear his words. Aquistede thanks him for the blessing, promising to return for a formal greeting if Tieroros gives him the answer he wishes for. Schnaus adds, however, that he cannot agree to any marriage that his daughter does not desire. Aquistede replies that he understands and that this is all he requires. He then thinks to himself that he does not want Tieroros to remain in this place a moment longer and decides he will take her away. As he begins to walk toward her, he recalls the very first time he ever saw her. The scene flashes back to the Academy's library, where Aquistede's attendant, Elliot, finds him watching someone out the window. Elliot chuckles, observing that the prince seems to spend more time admiring that flower than reading his books. Aquistede agrees, saying her expressions change so much that he never gets bored. Elliot then gently reminds the prince that Lady Tieroros is Prince Heart Knights' fiancée. Aquistede, still gazing out the window, replies sadly, "I know." He was aware it was an impossible love, and he also mused on how she, a nobleman's daughter, would read in the garden rather than at home. He would fantasize about how good it would be to attend parties just to talk to her or ask her to dance. He imagined wrapping her in his arms, but knew that if he ever did, he would not want to let her go. In truth, he simply wanted to talk to her, read books next to her, and eat sweets by her side. He lamented that it is often said a first love is not meant to be. However, back in the present at the party, his feelings wish to break through. He steps forward and his voice rings out, "Stop right there, Prince Heartking." He confronts him, asking, "Aren't your words much more vociferous than hers?" before turning to Tiaros. The side story ends with Aquastide's inner thought. The flower that I could only gaze at can now be in my arms. An extra comic shows Aquastide's attendant Elliot noting that the prince now has a fan club and is so popular. Aquastide, looking bored, just says, "What?" Nearby, two female students whisper, wondering what happened to Lady Tiaros, who has been sighing for a while. They wonder if the book she is reading is boring. Elliot tries to get the prince's attention about his fan club, but Aquastide pays no attention and continues to stare out the window at Tiaros. Tiaros, meanwhile, is deep in her sweets brain, thinking that the sweets she made yesterday were lacking something and wondering how to make them more delicious. Elliot realizes the prince has no interest in the fan club and is only wondering if Tiaros will look in his direction. Princess Tiaros stands on her balcony at night. She is completely shocked when Prince Aquastide suddenly appears, and she thinks the moon looks lovely. She is secretly thrilled, believing he came just to see her, which feels even more special than an event in the game. Prince Aquastide apologizes for his abrupt arrival while he jumps and steps onto her balcony. Tiaros is flustered, asking what he is doing there all by himself. He explains he came quietly because there was something he just had to show her, and he doubted that Marquis Clementil would permit such a late-night visit. He apologizes again for showing up so suddenly and clarifies that he won't ask to come into her room. Prince Aquastide then asks Lady Tiaros if she knows about the Star Festival of Fairies. She confirms that she does know of it, and he looks glad, explaining he came specifically because he wanted to show it to her. Tiaros is very surprised by this. Tiaros internally recalls that the Star Festival of Fairies is a special event from the game, The Ring of Lapis Lazuli. It is an event the heroine can only see with the character she has become the most intimate with, and she remembers images of the heroine with various characters. She is confused and wonders if they can see it right now, as she doesn't think today is the correct day for the event and believes only the heroine and a capture target can trigger it. The prince states that while it isn't the right time, the power of the fairies will help him. Tiaros thinks his ability to use the power of fairies is amazing. The prince explains that fairies of the forest, sea, and sky live in Marin Forest. Once every year on a summer night, these fairies cause stars to fall from the sky. He adds that it is usually only viewable from the Marin Forest Kingdom, but because Lapis Lazuli is a neighboring country, there are places where it is visible. He then asks Tiaros to give him her hand, and she nervously agrees. He holds her hand and calls out to the fairies as a gentle wind begins to blow. Tiaros' heart pounds as the prince holds her hand. He notices her and comments that a girl shouldn't wear such light clothing so late at night, asking if she is cold. He then gently drapes his own coat over her shoulders. She thanks him but immediately worries that His Highness might catch a cold himself. Prince Aquastide smiles, reassuring her that he has been toughened by training and that his only worry is for her health. He apologizes for his forcefulness and asks her forgiveness, noting she must be tired. Lady Tiaros starts to reply, admitting that she is actually very happy. She confirms again that she is very happy too. The prince chuckles and gently tells her to look at the sky. Tiaros suddenly panics, wondering what she should do and stammering. When she finally looks up at the sky, she is stunned, whispering, "No way." The night sky is filled with countless falling stars, and she declares that it's beautiful. Prince Aquastide watches her reaction, relieved, and says he's glad. Tiaros is amazed, thinking about how the prince managed to do this as she looks at him in awe. She recognizes the beautiful scene as the event CG from the game. Prince Aquastide then slowly and smoothly reaches out to cup her face, telling her he is so glad that she likes it. Tiaros is flustered by his touch. His gaze feels like sweet honey, and his touch is respectful and gentle, as if he is handling treasure. Tiaros' heart pounds again, and she feels as if she is being sucked in by His Highness. Breaking the spell, Tiaros offers to make him a cup of tea, saying she will prepare her favorite one for him. Prince Aquastide politely states that he must refuse her kind offer. Tiaros then panics internally, realizing she just invited a man into her room and worrying that he must think she is improper. She quickly revises her offer, suggesting she bring the tea set out to where they are. The prince chuckles, saying if she insists that much, he can hardly refuse and will gladly partake. Tiaros prepares black tea, adding honey since it is cold, and also brings madeleines and macarons, hoping he will like it all. She brings the tray out to the balcony and asks the prince if he is cold, offering to bring him something to cover himself with. He replies that he is fine. Tiaros then asks for her coat back, but he insists that he wants her to wear it. Tiaros fidgets, blushing as she realizes the truth is that the coat is filled with Prince Akuyaku's scent. They sit together on a sofa, and Prince Akuyaku mentions he didn't know there was a space like this here. Tiaros explains that she often reads there when the weather is nice. She thinks to herself that this is her secret place because it's connected to her room but hidden around a corner, which is why she likes it. Sitting there with him makes her feel as if she's doing something wrong, and she blushes. Tiaros nervously serves the tea, saying she hopes he likes it. He takes a sip and confirms it's delicious, asking if it contains honey. Tiaros smiles brightly and says it is, explaining she is fond of honey because it's good for you and pairs well with sweets. He observes that this must be her favorite. Tiaros becomes embarrassed, wondering what she is supposed to do or if she should lean on him, but then reminds herself they aren't engaged or even lovers. Her heart pounds as the feeling that they are doing something wrong persists, making her want to scream. She mentions she also prepared sweets but realized how late it is, adding she is sure His Highness would not eat such things at this hour. Prince Akuyaku replies that since it is something she prepared, he will, of course, have some. He takes a madeleine and eats it, saying as he finds it delicious. Tiaros is relieved but privately worries if he is forcing himself and if he's alright. Feeling relieved, Tiaros happily explains that she loves madeleines and that they go well with tea, hot chocolate, and all kinds of drinks. She tells him she usually sits here reading and trying out her new creations. She suddenly stops, horrified as she wonders why she is talking so much about sweets to the prince of another country. She knows she likes sweets so much she can't stop once she starts and worries if he finds it off-putting. Prince Akuyaku simply observes that she really is fond of sweets and books. Tiaros apologizes, feeling she was ill-mannered. However, the prince smiles and tells her he wouldn't say that at all. He says she looks very adorable when she talks about sweets and that he could listen to her forever. Tiaros blushes and asks him not to indulge her so much. She reflects internally that she has loved otome games and sweets since her previous life, and because she cannot play games here, her love for sweets has taken over. As Tiaros blushes and glances at him, she thinks that Prince Akuyaku is sweeter than any confection. She thinks he is definitely sweeter than any sugary treat and much sweeter than honey and sugar. She imagines marrying him and feels she is likely to melt on their wedding day. Prince Akuyaku sees her blushing and chuckles, thinking it's cute how even her ears have turned red. The scene then changes to the day of their date. Tiaros is being prepared by her maid, Philin, who fastens a coral accessory, a Marin Forest specialty, into her hair. Tiaros asks if it's too much. A note explains that ever since the graduation party, all the servants in the mansion have a less-than-friendly feeling toward Prince Heartknights and, on the other hand, seem to worship Prince Akuyaku. Philin smirks and teases Tiaros, asking if she finds the wait unbearable and wondering aloud what will happen when Prince Akuyaku arrives. Tiaros insists that is not true at all, but Philin interrupts, declaring that Tiaros is the least composed one. Philin says she is so thankful that Lady Tiaros was saved from that idiot prince. She then stops herself, saying they should stop talking about him or it will ruin the mood, just as she announces that Prince Akuyaku has arrived. Tiaros says they should not keep him waiting and begins to walk down the stairs, her heart pounding. Philin calls out to Lady Tiaros, telling her that if she ends up not returning, she will cooperate and create an alibi for her. Tiaros is flustered by Philin's words and exclaims that she shall return as is proper. Prince Akuyaku takes her hand as Philin waves them off, telling her ladyship to take care. They walk toward the carriage as, finally, the date begins. Tiaros and Prince Akuyaku on their date, walking through a beautiful field. Tiaros thanks him for bringing her, saying she had no idea such a wonderful place existed. Prince Akuyaku is simply glad that she likes it. Tiaros internally wonders what a waste it is that this perfect date spot was never in the game, but she feels happy that she gets to see it with Prince Akuyaku. They arrive at a spot where a table and chairs have been prepared, and Tiaros is impressed by the royal maids, as she didn't even notice them working. Prince Akuyaku observes that she must be tired from the carriage ride and suggests they take a break for some tea. He considerately offers her his hand, which she accepts with a thank you. Tiaros' heart pounds as she reflects that this is her very first date, She had never been escorted so elegantly or been on a date like this with Prince Heartknights. As they sit, Prince Aquasteed asks if Tiara Rose is cold, but she reassures him that she is alright, finding the breeze perfect and the sun warm. He begins to pour tea, explaining that he had his favorite prepared for today and hopes she will like it too. Tiara Rose is struck by how friendly the crown prince is. She thinks about how different he is from how he was at the graduation party, realizing he is the type of person who can separate his private and public life. She had worried it might be stifling if he was so upright in private, but seeing him like this makes her feel closer, and the memory makes her heart beat fast. Prince Aquasteed asks if she would prefer milk or lemon in her tea, personally recommending milk. Tiara Rose accepts the milk, noting the tea's lovely smell as he hands her the cup. She mentions that she also prefers milk during winter and early spring, and he smiles, commenting that they have similar tastes as he does the same. Tiara Rose then excuses herself, saying she has something for him. She rustles in her belongings and pulls out a neatly wrapped package, revealing cookies she baked herself. She explains that she is the one who baked them, so she isn't sure if they will suit his taste. Prince Aquasteed is overjoyed, exclaiming that she made them for him and that they smell amazing. Tiara Rose internally recalls that when her past life memories returned, so did her dessert recipes. She had wanted to bake a cake but chose cookies since they are easier to carry and she was unsure of their plans. Prince Aquasteed takes a bite and is amazed, telling her he never knew she could make something so delicious. After enjoying a cookie, Prince Aquasteed playfully holds one up to Tiara Rose and tells her to say, "The." Tiara Rose is completely shocked and flustered, blushing deeply as she stammers. She wonders if he was always this way. She knew he was sweet from their last encounter, but this is on another level. She feels dizzy, wondering what kind of expression she should make since she has never done this before, but she also feels it would be rude to decline an offer from the crown prince. Tiara Rose shyly leans in and takes a bite of the cookie from his fingers, covering her mouth as she crunches. Prince Aquasteed chuckles at her reaction. Tiara Rose turns bright red and squeezes her hands in her lap, thinking it is all so embarrassing. As Prince Aquasteed watches her, his own heart beats. He thinks to himself that his plan was to get Tiara Rose flustered so she would notice him more, and now he wonders if he can go even further. He leans closer and tells her she is adorable even when she eats. He then says he has a request and asks if he may call her Tiara. Tiara Rose's heart dumps wildly at his sudden closeness. Although she thinks using nicknames might be rude, she agrees, saying, "Of course, Prince Aquasteed." She reflects that while it was sudden and embarrassing, she felt no disgust, unlike when Prince Heartknights used to call her Tiara, which made her feel nothing. Prince Aquasteed is glad and replies by asking Tiara to call him Aqua. Tiara Rose is so happy she feels she could go crazy, and she nervously stammers, Prince Aqua?" He smiles and tells her he is so happy. In the next moment, Prince Aquasteed gently pulls Tiara Rose into a hug. Her heart pounds frantically, and she panics, worrying that he will hear it beating like crazy. As she hesitantly places her hands on his chest, she is surprised to feel that Prince Aqua's heart is also beating loudly. She realizes she is not the only one who is nervous. Feeling it is all too embarrassing, she hesitates, and he pulls back slightly with a smile, saying, "Too bad." Tiara Rose is so embarrassed she cannot look at him. Prince Aquasteed apologizes, admitting he was being pretty hasty. He squeezes her hand and says, "But, Tiara," before teasingly adding that she looks like she wants him to kiss her. Before she can react, he leans in and kisses her, whispering that he can't help but want her when she is near him. He pulls back and says, "Too bad," for a second time. Tiara Rose notes he has said it twice, realizing he must want her that much. He admits he had planned on slowly building up their dates, but he just can't. Tiara Rose thinks that if he keeps smiling at her so sweetly, she doesn't know what will happen. Prince Aquasteed then asks Tiara if he can make another request. She replies that of course he can, if it is within her power. He smiles brightly and asks if she will feed him more cookies. Surprised by this kind of request, Tiara Rose nervously holds a cookie to his mouth as he opens it and says, "Ah." Tiara Rose thinks it feels like feeding a dog as she says, "Ah, dash." He chews the cookie, declaring it delicious and thanking her. He praises her baking, saying the cookies have a subtle flavor and he could eat a ton of them. He sighs, thinking to himself that he is so happy he might just lose control. He looks at the blushing Tiara Rose and thinks she is just like a strawberry, musing that perhaps he compares her to food because she is cute enough to eat. He sighs happily again, then his thoughts turn serious. He considers that he doesn't have permission to propose to her right now, and he wonders what will happen when he is finally allowed to ask, a worry he never imagined he would have. Tiaros notices his quiet mood and gently says his new name, Prince Aqua. Later, as they stand in the field of flowers, Prince Aquasteed gently strokes her hair. Tiaros thinks that this is the first time anyone has made her heart beat so hard. She decides she must ask her father for approval of the engagement proposal. As she looks at her home, the manor, she wonders if she, the villainess, is truly allowed to be this happy. Back in her room, Tiaros paces back and forth, fidgeting nervously. Her maid, Philin, notices her behavior and giggles, asking if the date was a success. Tiaros is too embarrassed to say what happened, recalling how they fed each other cookies and how it was her first time doing such a thing with a man. She just wishes her father would hurry home. Philin presses, asking what actually happened. Tiaros is flustered, her mind replaying the moment Prince Aquasteed noticed her hairpin and asked if that meant he could be hopeful, his soft voice still ringing in her ears. Philin guesses, asking if he kissed her. Tiaros shakes her head frantically, exclaiming, "No way," and that she couldn't possibly do more, as just being fed cookies nearly gave her a heart attack. Philin says that's a bit disappointing but smiles, noting that it's clear Prince Aquasteed thinks very highly of her. Tiaros blushes and agrees, saying she is very glad that he is so kind and considerate. She continues, saying, Prince Aqua's gaze is always kind, he truly looks at her, and she is sure he would never upset her. Philin suddenly exclaims, "Oh." When Tiaros asks what's wrong, Philin points out that Tiaros just used a nickname when she used to call him Prince Aquasteed. Philin smiles brightly, saying she is very happy for her and is looking forward to their future together. Philin then observes that Tiaros seems even more fidgety than usual. She says she first thought it was just lingering memories from the date, but now she suspects more. She asks directly, "He proposed, right?" Tiaros flinches, confirming Philin's suspicion. Philin smiles, stating that this must be why Tiaros is so anxiously waiting for her father, the master, to return. Tiaros realizes Philin knew, and Philin confirms it, of course. Right on cue, Philin looks out the window and spots a carriage, announcing that it looks like the master has arrived. Tiaros dashes to the window, sees it is true, and thinks he is finally home. She runs from the room, calling out, "Father." She finds him in the hall, fidgeting nervously. Her father greets her, "I'm home, Tiara," and asks why she is in such a rush. She tries to deny it, but he smiles, saying he knows his daughter and that this must be about Prince Aquasteed. Tiaros quietly confirms, "Yes." She then asks, "So, I can accept it?" Looking at him hopefully, she adds, "Please, father." Her father looks at her bright, smiling face and thinks to himself that while it will be lonely when she leaves, nothing is more important than her smile. Elsewhere, Prince Heartknights is shown, having done something he feels cannot be undone. He thinks that he wants Tiara to be happy, but he says her name with regret. He recalls his time with her, like escorting her to a party, but admits there was nothing romantic about it. He thinks he should have been more focused on Tiara. Now, Tiara's face won't leave his mind, even though he is supposed to love Akari. 1 year ago, showing Prince Aquasteed in the academy library. Other students observe him, noting he is there again and remarking on how serious he is. They whisper about how he has been traveling between countries for years to study and has transferred to their academy to spend his last year of school. Prince Aquasteed himself is engrossed in a book, flipping a page as he thinks about how the history lessons on craftwork are very interesting. He also notes that the library contains many great books related to that topic. While reading, Prince Aquasteed looks up and glances out the window, where he sees a young woman having tea with her maid. He recognizes her as the daughter of Marquis Clementil, the one who was granted the name of Lapis. After a moment, he looks back down at his book, flipping another page and thinking to himself that she seems quite ordinary. Several days later, Tiaros is seen outside the library window again, reading a book with her maid. Prince Aquasteed's attendant, Elliot, notices them from inside and points out to the prince that they have come again. Elliot reflects that he didn't think much about it at first, although it is unusual for a lady to come there to read books. Elliot's thoughts continue as Tiaros is shown reading, sometimes blushing at her book. He admits that as she came to read almost every day, he began to think about her often. Eventually, Elliot found himself looking for her, while Prince Aquasteed is seen smiling as he watches her from the window. Elliot then turns to his master, saying, "Prince Aquasteed." He warns the prince not to think of such absurd things, reminding him that Lady Tiaros is engaged to Prince Heartknights. Prince Aquasteed looks away, merely replying, I know that, but... Elliot thinks about his prince, recalling that he has only ever seen him politely reject the beautiful ladies who approach him. Elliot sadly wishes this love could be returned but concludes that there is nothing he can do. The next day, Prince Aquasteed is at the window again, this time watching the rain pitter-patter outside. He sees Tiara Rose and her maid outside reading and remarks that it's a pity, as she seemed to be enjoying her book so much. He muses that the rain shouldn't last for too long, but then he suddenly reaches his hand out of the window. This alarms Elliot, who calls out his name. The rain begins to pour, and Tiara Rose and her maid are shown huddling together as it patters down. Prince Aquasteed worries that her book will get wet if he doesn't do something, and he reasons that since he can't make direct contact, this one act will surely be alright. Suddenly, a magical rainbow appears over Tiara Rose, causing her and her maid to look up with bright, surprised smiles. From the window, Prince Aquasteed glances at their happy reaction and thinks that he is glad he did it. He feels that since he is unable to make direct contact, he should be allowed this one small happiness. A note explains that magic exists in this world, and Prince Aquasteed possesses immense magical power. He is also a skilled swordsman who acts as a magic warrior, though Elliot notes he rarely uses his magic, preferring the sword. At this time, Tiara Rose was just a girl he watched from his window, and they had only spoken once at an evening party. Elliot sadly mutters that he wishes they could be together. As Tiara Rose and her maid cheer happily at the rainbow, Prince Aquasteed watches them with a gentle smile. Elliot, however, looks on with a pained expression, wondering why fate must be so cruel. The story then jumps forward 1 year, to the time after the graduation party. Elliot asks Prince Aquasteed if he has finished writing the letter. Prince Aquasteed confirms he has and hands the sealed letter to Elliot, instructing him to send it to His Majesty. Elliot takes the letter, saying, "Understood." A magical bird is then shown flying through the clouds to deliver the message. As they watch the bird fly away, Elliot thinks that the kingdom should be fine now. The letter detailed the prince's intention to bring Tiara Rose back to Marine Forest as his betrothed, along with all the necessary preparations. Prince Aquasteed thinks to himself that he is going to marry a lady of Lapis. He also included in the letter the most favorable transaction for Lapis Lazuli and resolved that the rooms and furniture must be perfect, ensuring Tiara Rose can live in Marine Forest without any inconvenience. Elliot smiles, remarking that the prince sure moves quickly, and he feels stupid for having worried at all. Prince Aquasteed admits he is surprised at himself but says he really did think the graduation party was his only chance, remembering how Tiara Rose was shaking slightly. Prince Aquasteed's expression hardens as he recalls the party, thinking about how he could allow the woman he loved to stand there alone. He remembers taking her hand and thinks that it's all right now. He then hands Elliot another letter, this one the formal engagement request, and instructs him to have it delivered to Marquis Clementil first thing in the morning. Elliot again says, "Understood." The prince thinks that there isn't much time before he must return to his country, but more than anything he just wants her by his side as soon as possible. His wish was granted. The morning after their date, Marquis Clementil responded with his consent. Later, Tiara Rose and Philin are in a waiting room, and Tiara Rose explains she came to see Prince Aqua. A maid says she will let him know and asks her to wait. Tiara Rose worries that she came too suddenly, but Philin reassures her that her father sent word ahead. Philin adds that they would have been told immediately if he couldn't see her, so there is clearly no problem. Tiara Rose agrees but admits she is very nervous because this is their first meeting since she agreed to marry him. Tiara Rose wonders if she will really be able to see him. Just then, there are 3 knocks at the door, and a maid announces that Prince Aquasteed's attendant has arrived. Elliot enters, apologizing for the wait. He informs her that a room has been prepared and the prince will be there soon, asking her to follow him. As they walk, Tiara Rose apologizes for intruding. Elliot introduces himself and smiles, telling her not to apologize because Prince Aquasteed was so happy that she came. Tiara Rose thinks to herself that she is glad Elliot seems so nice. Elliot makes conversation, praising Lapis Lazuli as a wonderful country with especially beautiful ornaments. Tiara Rose, thinking he seems warm and kind, replies that he is too kind and that their craftsmen work hard. Elliot then describes Marine Forest as being filled with treasures from the sea like coral and pearls, calling it every girl's dream. He adds that Prince Aquasteed will be delighted. Just as he speaks, a voice suddenly shouts, "Tiara!" Tiara Rose and Philin both turn in shock. They see Prince Heartknight standing in the hallway, and Tiara Rose says his name in disbelief. Prince Aquasteed in his office holding a document. He thinks about how Tiara Rose accepted the engagement and how he desires to see her as soon as possible. Following 3 knocks, he grants entry, and Marquis Clementil, Tiara Rose's father, enters, apologizing for the sudden visit. Prince Aquistide assures him he is always welcome. The Marquis explains that his daughter wishes to come and meet the prince today, and Prince Aquistide immediately agrees, saying he is very much looking forward to it. The prince then thanks the Marquis for agreeing to the engagement, and the Marquis replies that he has already prepared everything, so there is no need to worry. As the Marquis excuses himself, Prince Aquistide reflects that he didn't expect the Marquis to arrange things so far in advance. Once in the hall, the Marquis smiles, thinking that this level of preparation must mean Prince Aquistide has already laid the groundwork with both King Alexander and Marine Forest. He sees this as proof of how much the prince loves his precious daughter. He muses that while the situation with Prince Heartknights was unfortunate, he will only let Tiara marry someone strong and truly in love with her, and it seems he no longer needs to worry about that. Back in his office, Prince Aquistide waits, noting that Tiara Rose is taking far too long. He thinks about how he asked Elliot to deliver some documents and that Elliot, who is skilled with both sword and magic, is guiding her. He knows the castle should be safe, but he still worries. The scene then shifts to the hallway, where Tiara Rose and Philin have indeed run into Prince Heartknights, and Tiara Rose wonders why he is there. Prince Heartknights clenches his fist and acknowledges that she must be there to see Prince Aquistide, which Tiara Rose confirms. He then shocks her by bowing deeply and apologizing for his actions at the graduation party. Tiara Rose, flustered, tells him to raise his head, reminding him that royalty should not bow so easily. He remarks that she has always been the one to correct him. Tiara Rose is privately happy, thinking that the character she liked in her past life is now able to think for himself and redeem himself, though she suspects the king must have scolded him severely. Her relief is short-lived as Prince Heartknights suddenly grabs her arm, his voice sounding disturbingly sweet. Tiara Rose is disgusted by his emotion and tells him to stop. Just then, a hand lands on Heartknights' shoulder. Prince Aquistide has arrived, and he angrily asks Prince Heartknights what he is trying to do to his precious fiancée. Tiara Rose's fear vanishes instantly, and she calls out to Prince Aqua, her heart soaring at hearing him call her his precious fiancée. Prince Aquistide pulls her into his arms, kissing her head and apologizing for being late. He glares at Heartknights, thinking about how he treated her so horribly and is still gracelessly trying to attach himself to her. He vows to protect her. He firmly tells Heartknights that Tiara is his fiancée and not to touch her. Heartknights, stunned, apologizes, saying he didn't realize the engagement was official so quickly. Prince Aquistide says he will forgive him this time, as long as he understands. He then gently leads Tiara Rose away, telling her that tea and sweets are prepared just the way she likes them. As they walk away with Elliot and a fist-pumping Philin, Prince Heartknights is left alone in the hall. In the drawing room, Tiara Rose apologizes for the sudden visit, but Aquistide reassures her it's fine. She is so nervous that she begins to excitedly ramble about her love for strawberries, the specialty of her country, and her desire to make new cakes, cookies, and puddings with them now that her past life memories have returned. She quickly apologizes for getting carried away, but Aquistide just smiles, glad she likes them, and reveals the strawberries on the table are ones he had sent from his home. Tiara Rose takes a bite of cake, declaring it delicious. She then tries to talk about the incident earlier, but Prince Aquistide gently silences her with a no. He asks why he shouldn't protect her, stating, "I'm your fiancée, Tiara." Hearing him say it directly makes her heart thump wildly, and she feels embarrassed. He holds her hand, thanking her for choosing him. Tiara Rose replies that she is the one who is grateful, and holding his hand, she feels completely safe. Prince Aquistide then formally introduces Elliot, explaining he is the only servant he brought, but he is highly skilled in combat and politics. Tiara Rose, in turn, introduces Philin, explaining they were raised together and she is like an older sister to her. Tiara Rose worries about taking the 18-year-old Philin so far away, but Philin firmly states she intends to serve Tiara Rose always. Tiara Rose is moved and vows to protect her. Prince Aquistide, relieved Tiara Rose has a good maid, asks Elliot to give Philin some advice for the upcoming trip. As their attendants step aside, Prince Aquistide asks Tiara Rose for some time alone and calls her over. He gently cups her face, thinking how lovely she is and how he wants to give her more attention. Tiara Rose's heart thumps at his closeness. He thanks her for accepting his proposal and says that while he knows he's been forceful, he wants to propose again directly, without formalities. He declares, "Lady Tiara Rose Lapis Clementil, I love you with all my heart. May I, Aquasteed Marine Forest, ask you to be my wife?" With tears in her eyes, Tiaros accepts. Overjoyed, Prince Aquasteed pulls her into a tight embrace, apologizing and saying he is just so happy. He whispers, "I love you, Tiara," and gently kisses her. Tiaros thinks about the joy of being kissed and held by the one she loves. He kisses her again and again, as she thinks he only meant to do it once but is now doing a little more. After several more kisses, Tiaros feels weak. He finally holds her, and after licking his lips, he whispers he couldn't stop because she was too cute. Tiaros is so embarrassed she thinks she might die, but she is also incredibly happy. Suddenly, a commotion is heard. Knights rush into the room, shouting about magic and how they've never seen such a thing. Prince Aquasteed pulls Tiaros behind him as she wonders if they are enemies. Tiaros then looks on in shock, recognizing the light as the heroine's magic, holy prayer. A commentary on the popular game, The Ring of Lapis Lazuli, which features a heroine who starts as a commoner. This heroine, Akari, is adopted by a margrave and travels to the royal capital, where she is fated to fall in love and have her first encounter with Prince Heartknights. Akari is shown arriving in a carriage, smiling as she peeks out the window. At the same time, a 14-year-old Prince Heartknights is sneaking into town. According to the game's first step, the heroine is supposed to get lost and then ask Heartknights for directions, recognizing him as a fellow student. However, as Akari walks, she gasps, sensing something is wrong, and shouts for someone to watch out. A sign suddenly thuds to the ground, and she mutters in confusion, relieved after seeing the fallen sign. Prince Heartknights rushes to her, asking if she is all right and noting it was a close call. Akari, with tears in her eyes, confesses she was very frightened, which makes the prince's heart beat. He tells her he is glad she isn't hurt, but Akari then notices his arm is injured. He tries to dismiss it as just a small scratch. Akari, however, looks very sad and insists on seeing his arm, grabbing it. Heartknights, surprised, asks her not to look so sad, muttering that he's fine and didn't mean to hurt her. As Akari holds his arm, a drip of light appears, and the scratch on his arm vanishes. Prince Heartknights is impressed that she can use healing magic and thanks her. As he starts to introduce himself, Akari explains that while they haven't formally met, she has seen his face before. She introduces herself as Akari Tetalite. Heartknights recognizes the family name and smiles, saying he is glad to have met her, to which she agrees. A note clarifies that their meeting was originally supposed to happen at the academy the following day. Heartknights says he has no time to talk then but hopes they can speak more another time. Akari bows, says goodbye, and thanks him for giving her directions. As she walks away, Heartknights smirks, puzzled because he never actually gave her any directions. Later, the game's second step begins as Akari transfers to the academy and is introduced to her new class. During recess, she excitedly runs up to Prince Heartknights, exclaiming how happy she is to meet him again and admitting she was so excited she could barely sleep. Heartknights is surprised by her honesty, noting she is very cheerful and unlike most ladies, who would act more gracefully. Finding her genuine and cute, he offers to give her a tour of the school. Akari is thrilled and immediately accepts, pulling him by the arm to go, which triggers the school tour event. As they chatter and walk closely together, other students gossip, noting that a lady normally would not pull on the arm of a man who is betrothed to another. They wonder if the prince will tell Akari about his fiancée, Lady Tiaros. Tiaros's friends ask her if she is all right. Tiaros calmly responds that while she is his fiancée, this is the academy, and Lady Akari is new and must be anxious. Her friends call her too kind, but Tiaros decides she will speak to Prince Heartknights about it later, as she doesn't want to embarrass the crown prince in public. She feels a sting of jealousy and reflects that she and Heartknights have never linked arms outside of formal balls. As Akari points to where she wants to go next, Heartknights thinks to himself that he is enjoying the fun, casual conversation, which is a relief from his usual royal pressures. An extra chapter shows Prince Heartknights brooding in bed, tossing and turning as he regrets not being more attentive to Tiara. He stays up all night thinking, and when his servant arrives in the morning, he gloomily looks at the bright sun. Another extra reveals Akari's situation. She is confined to a room and bored because Prince Heartknights isn't there. She is shocked to see she is barely in the story's second volume and tries to practice magic out of boredom. A third extra details Tiaros' preparations for her date, as she wonders what sweets to bring. She considers baking a cake but doesn't know the exact date. After agonizing over her many recipes, she decides cookies will work because he can also take them home. That same night, Prince Aquastide returns to his room after his balcony visit with Tiaros. Elliot welcomes him back and asks if he plans to take his jacket off. The prince says, "Not yet," and sits down, closing his eyes to enjoy the lingering scent of Lady Tiaros on his clothes. A final extra shows Prince Aquastide at his desk, so happy that Tiara is coming to visit him. He immediately begins writing, wanting to meet her soon. He instructs Elliot to prepare a tea party in the garden with pink and yellow roses, colors he thinks would suit her. When Tiaros arrives, she is wowed by the beautiful rose garden and the delicious-looking sweets. Prince Aquastide serves her himself, telling her to pick whichever she likes, which makes Tiaros so happy she's scared. In the midst of the light, Prince Aquastide is shown firmly squeezing Tiaros' hand while he smiles to comfort her, promising that he will protect her. Another view shows Prince Aquastide embracing Tiaros as she sits on a bench surrounded by beautiful roses. Tiaros then has a flashback, remembering a lesson about the holy prayer. The flashback takes us to a classroom where a teacher explains this unique magic. The teacher describes the holy prayer as the rarest magic, a prayer from a pure maiden that can only be used by one person at a time. This incredible magic also possesses the power to purify. Simply having this gift affects the entire country, protecting all of its people from any harm. A student in the class raises his hand and asks what would happen when the magic user died. The teacher explains that it is said the user would be reborn, although nobody knows where or who it would be. Whenever someone who can use this magic is born within the country, they are given the special title of Lapis. Back in the present, Tiaros recalls that this special person was the heroine of the game, the Ring of Lapis Lazuli. She had assumed that Lady Akari had not used it before. According to the original game story, the heroine was supposed to awaken this power right after the conviction event, so Tiaros is confused about why it is happening now. She looks shocked and worries that her own existence in this world has somehow changed the timing of this crucial event. As the bright light finally fades, a man named Elliot says it appears so and runs off, telling Prince Aquastide to please wait there while he goes to check on things. He also asks Tiaros to wait with his highness. Prince Aquastide, standing near a castle, again tells Tiara not to worry. He reassures her that Elliot will return soon with news, but Tiaros is worried. She knows the holy prayer's power is something that every kingdom desires. Tiaros' thoughts spiral as she considers the political problems this will cause. The kingdom of Lapis Lazuli would definitely want this power, and the kingdom of Marine Forest would also be desperate to have it. She remembers that magic users often ended up marrying into the royal family of the kingdom they lived in. She becomes distressed, shaking as she wonders if things are still going according to the game's story and if they are nearing the end. She tries to dismiss the awful thought that Prince Aqua might want the heroine's power for himself. A chill runs through Tiaros as she has a terrible realization. This could mean they are moving towards the game's sequel. Prince Aquastide notices her distress and gently pats her head, telling her again that it's fine and there is no need for her to worry. Sometime later, Tiaros' attendant, Philin, serves them tea. Philin smiles and mentions that she made the tea a little sweeter than usual. Tiaros smiles and thanks Philin for the tea. After some time passes, a knight arrives, saluting the prince and excusing himself to deliver a report. The knight reports that the light was apparently just from a malfunctioning magic device. He continues that currently, no problems have arisen. However, he thinks it is advisable for Lady Tiaros to return home until all the devices have been fully inspected. Prince Aquastide listens and thoughtfully replies that he sees and understands very well. The prince then instructs Philin to please prepare the carriage, and Philin responds, "Certainly." Philin sighs with relief, saying she is glad it was just a magic device and nothing serious. Prince Aquastide turns to Tiara and tells her she should return to the mansion, adding that he will go with her. Tiaros looks deeply saddened, thinking to herself that she must accept the official report about a malfunctioning magic device. She feels frustrated that she doesn't know anything and wishes she could witness what happens next, but she knows she cannot say something like that out loud. She wonders if the king made the decision for this cover-up, or if it was an order from the holy prayer user herself. Still, she holds on to the hope that Prince Aqua will not choose the heroine. Meanwhile, Prince Aquastide is in his office, thinking that Elliot is late. He notes that the castle is calm now and most of the staff have returned to their duties. He knows that Elliot is extremely well suited to intelligence work and would normally be here by now. Because Elliot has not returned yet, Aquastide concludes there is only one possibility. The previous report about the malfunction was a complete lie. Leaning back in his chair, Aquastide suspects that something big has happened. He feels frustrated because he doesn't know for sure and he cannot go around the castle investigating himself. He knows this isn't like the confrontation at the graduation party and that King Alexander will surely handle whatever happened very harshly. He decides he will just have to wait. While waiting, he finishes a large stack of documents, noting that some of it was for tomorrow, but he ended up finishing it all. He smiles and thinks about Tiara Rose, remembering their kisses and feeling he deserves credit for holding himself back as much as he did. He feels happy just thinking about how they will be together from now on. His thoughts are interrupted by 3 knocks at the door. A maid enters the room and says she has brought him dinner. Aquastide, who is tapping his fingers on his desk, tells her to enter and that she may serve it. The maid replies, "Certainly," as the scene shows the castle under a dark night sky. As Aquastide sips a drink, there is more knocking before the door bursts open. Elliot stumbles in, panting and looking very tired. He announces, "I've returned, Your Highness." Aquastide calmly says, "You're late. What happened?" Elliot delivers his shocking report. It's most surprising, but Lady Akari, who accompanied Prince Heartknights during the party, the holy prayer has awakened within her. Prince Aquastide is visibly stunned as an image of Lady Akari and Prince Heartknights appears. He quietly processes the news, thinking that the last holy prayer user died several years ago, so it would not be strange for a new one to appear. He sighs, realizing this is quite troublesome, especially for it to be Lady Akari of all people. He thinks about the maiden who can use the holy prayer and makes a firm decision. "I want her." Elliot adds that King Alexander is not likely to let her go and will indeed likely have her marry Prince Heartknights. The fact that they were told by report that it was just a malfunction proves the king must intend to keep it a secret for a while. Elliot says the fact that it took him so long to acquire the information is proof enough of this secrecy. Aquastide comments that while the king apologized for Prince Heartknight's actions at the graduation party, this is different. It has already been declared that he will not be king and that Sirius, the second prince, would be the heir. Now, they will probably be set up to support him, or at worst, the king could cut him off entirely. Aquastide repeats that this is truly troublesome. Elliot, bowing, states that King Alexander will act much more carefully now that he is with the holy prayer user and that he doubts the king would give her up even if it meant war. Aquastide acknowledges the great benefits to having someone who can wield that power, as the country is guaranteed peace. He thinks that with the holy prayer, his own country would thrive even more. He tells Elliot he will do as he commands and considers that he could use his own power to intervene. 10 days pass. Tiara Rose is at her mansion, as she hasn't returned to the castle since that night. No word has reached her about Lady Akari's awakening. She is aware that the royal family is keeping it a secret. Prince Aqua visits her every other day, but he has never mentioned it either. Tiara Rose wonders if he doesn't know about it, or perhaps if he knows but is hiding it from her. She feels frustrated because she cannot exactly ask about it. She is sure her father is aware of the situation, but she cannot explain to him how she knows about it. Philin approaches Lady Tiara Rose and announces that she has finished preparing for her marriage training. Tiara Rose, sitting on a sofa, thanks her and says they are now ready to travel to Marine Forest. Her father had previously said they would discuss her future when she returned after a year of training. Philin is excited, saying that since it's been decided she will be going as well, she intends to serve Lady Tiara Rose forever. Tiara Rose then asks when they will be leaving and wonders if it isn't about time for Prince Aquastide to return to his country. Philin replies that Prince Aqua was originally supposed to stay for just 1 year for his studies, but she thinks it might be difficult for him to leave before the matter regarding Lady Akari is settled. She points out that it's not good to have royals from 2 kingdoms close to Lady Akari, especially since both kingdoms will want the holy prayer's power for their own. Tiara Rose is left frustrated, knowing that all she can do is wait for Prince Aqua to contact her, and she anxiously prays for the matter to be resolved quickly. Several days went by at the mansion, and Tiara Rose received a letter from Prince Aqua, which was delivered in an envelope, stating that he would be visiting her again. She sits by the window holding the letter and sighs, feeling relieved that things finally seem to be settled. She is also glad because she has not heard any bad news from her father. With his visit confirmed, she decides she must prepare to receive the prince. This begins the 10th chapter of the story. Tiara Rose is in the kitchen, happily presenting a tray full of desserts she has made, including a large, beautifully decorated cake and several small fruit tarts. Birds can be heard chirping outside the window as she brightly tells Philin that the desserts are ready. She asks for Philin's opinion, saying she thinks they turned out pretty well. Philin smiles and agrees, exclaiming that they look very delicious. Tiara Rose is glad and asks Philin if she can have them sent up to her room, to which Philin cheerfully replies, certainly. Tiara Rose thinks about the tarts, remembering that she loved these desserts in her past life and used to eat them all the time. She imagines herself sitting with Prince Aquasteed, holding a tart and hoping that he likes them. She smiles as she thinks about how she even topped them with strawberries and simply cannot wait to see his reaction. She takes a small bite of one of the tarts herself and smiles, feeling confident that there is no need to worry because they are so delicious. She is sure he will definitely like them. Later, a servant enters her room and informs Lady Tiara Rose that Prince Aquasteed's carriage has just arrived. Philin asks Tiara Rose if she is sure she won't meet him in the drawing room. Tiara Rose, looking out her window, says yes, explaining that since she will be leaving soon, she has started to miss her room. She thinks about how she has so many fond memories of tea parties with her friends there. Philin comments that it is unfortunate that it's cloudy today, as she could have had tea on the terrace if the weather had permitted it. Tiara Rose just smiles, saying she doesn't mind because she is so happy. Outside, Prince Aquasteed exits his carriage while his attendant Elliot stands by. From her window, Tiara Rose peeks out to watch him arrive and looks flustered as a sound effect like a crackle is seen. When Prince Aquasteed enters her room, he immediately embraces a surprised Tiara Rose. He apologizes for not visiting recently, explaining that his hands were full making various preparations. Tiara Rose, still in his arms, tells him not to worry about it. Philin quietly shuffles out of the room and closes the door behind her. Tiara Rose then gestures for the prince to come further into the room. Prince Aquasteed hugs her again from behind, apologizing for keeping her waiting. He adds that at least he was able to finish everything. Tiara Rose, with her face held gently in his hand, starts to say she is fine, but he interrupts her by saying he wanted to see her and gives her a deep kiss. This is followed by several more tender kisses. He smiles at her and says, "You look very cute today, Tiara." Tiara Rose becomes very embarrassed and blushes deeply. Prince Aquasteed comments that she is just too adorable and, squeezing her hand, he asks if he may kiss her again. Prince Aquasteed gently pats her and pulls her into a smooth hug. Tiara Rose panics internally, thinking that she is far too embarrassed to say yes. Her heart is pounding loudly, and she wonders what she should do, fretting about what you are supposed to do in these situations. It has not even been that long since her first kiss. She confirms to herself that it's not that she doesn't like it, she just doesn't know how to answer him. Prince Aquasteed takes her hesitation as an answer and leans in to kiss her again. Her heart continues to pound as he whispers her name, Tiara, and kisses her forehead. He then moves to kiss her on the lips again, causing her to flinch in surprise. Tiara Rose squeezes the fabric of his clothes, and as her heart pounds, she thinks to herself that it is embarrassing, but she likes it. She slowly closes her eyes, noticing how long his eyelashes are. The kiss makes her feel wobbly, and she is so embarrassed that she feels like she is in someone else's body. Prince Aquasteed just chuckles and then sits down on the sofa, pulling a flustered Tiara Rose right into his lap. He smiles and tells her to let him be close to her for a little longer. Tiara Rose is still overwhelmed, her face is hot and her heart is hammering. As he smoothly touches her face, his expression turns serious, and he tells her that the engagement has been decided. Tiara Rose looks at him, completely confused. Prince Aquasteed clarifies that it is Lady Akari's engagement. He adds that he knows it is not exactly something she would want to hear about. Tiara Rose's heart thumps in her chest as she fearfully asks, "With whom?" Tiara Rose's mind immediately goes to a dark place, and she is pictured sitting alone in darkness. She remembers that Prince Aqua is a capture target in the game's sequel. She thinks that if he were to be engaged to Lady Akari, it would not be strange at all. In fact, she worries that it would also not be strange if he had worked hard for that engagement to happen. She inwardly pleads, "Please don't take Prince Aqua away from me." Prince Aquasteed notices her anxiety and gently squeezes her hands as she shakes. He tells her he can see she is anxious and suggests that maybe they should not talk about it, so she does not have to hear it. Tiara Rose looks up, confused, wondering why he is acting this way and asking if Lady Akari had not hurt her deeply as well. Tiara Rose composes herself, clasping her hands together. She looks at him and insists that she is fine and asks him to please tell her. Prince Aquasteed looks at her seriously and says, "Very well." He agrees to tell her since she wants him to, but he warns her that it must remain a secret. Tiara Rose simply replies, "Okay." He pulls Tiara Rose close so she can rest against his chest, and he gently caresses her hair. He tells her to let him know if she feels uncomfortable as he speaks. He then reveals the news, referring to Lady Akari as the woman who treated you like a villain. He tells Tiaros that she is to be engaged to Prince Heartknights, as a vision of Akari and Heartknights appears. Tiaros sighs deeply, a blush of relief spreading across her face. Prince Aquasteed looks at her, confused by her reaction. Tiaros apologizes, explaining that she was just so relieved. She clarifies her thoughts, saying she is relieved because this means Lady Akari will not be engaged to Prince Aqua. She confesses that she had thought he was the one who was to be engaged to Lady Akari, and she was very afraid. Prince Aquasteed holds her and thinks to himself what an adorable thing for her to be worried about, wondering what made her think that. He apologizes for causing her to worry and firmly promises her, "I would never choose someone over you, Tira." He tells her that she does not have to cry anymore. Tiaros is surprised as large tears begin to drip from her eyes, and she insists, "I'm not crying." Prince Aquasteed looks at her intensely and tells her, "I'm taking you with me to Marine Forest." Tiaros, with tears in her eyes, asks him, "Will you stay by my side forever?" She then answers her own question, crying and smiling as she says, "Yes. Of course, Prince Aqua." He leans in and kisses her, and they look at each other, blushing happily. The scene then cuts back to them at the tea table, where Tiaros apologizes for the interruption and asks him to please continue. Prince Aquasteed confirms that King Alexander has informed her that Prince Heartknights is no longer heir to the throne. This means the second son, Prince Sirius Lapis Lazuli Lactamuth, will now be the heir. He explains that Prince Sirius was officially engaged to Lady Charlotte Lapis Antiarch yesterday. They are both still young, the prince is 7 and Charlotte is 12. While the age gap between them is less than desirable, they need the backing of a Lapis in order to make him the heir. The plan is that Prince Sirius will one day be king, and he will be assisted by Prince Heartknights and Lady Akari, who can invoke the Holy Prayer. This arrangement will ensure the country runs smoothly. Tiaros looks off to the side, wondering to herself if everything truly resolved so neatly. After explaining this, he told her what would happen next. He is going home on the 10th, and when he does, she will come with him to receive her marriage training. Elsewhere, Philin is seen looking at a schedule, planning the next steps with the master so they do not have to worry about every little detail. Tiaros smiles, feeling an immense sense of relief. She is so glad that Prince Aqua did not get engaged to the heroine. Later, while drinking tea, she reflects on the situation. She thinks that while the conviction event certainly hurt, it is ultimately only a scenario from a game, and she can finally look at it that way now. She knows this is all because Prince Aqua treats her so well. She smiles, feeling sure that she will sleep well tonight. That night, while Tiaros is fast asleep in her bed, a bright light shines in her room. Lady Akari suddenly appears and says, "Oh, good evening." Tiaros sits up in her bed, confused. Lady Akari smiles and comments on how she arrived, noting how useful it is that she can teleport with this magic. Tiaros can only stare in shock, saying, "Lady Akari?" The chapter ends on this cliffhanger. Tiaros in her room, wondering why Lady Akari is there. She is confused because she believed Lady Akari was supposed to be confined to the castle and kept under guard. Lady Akari stands before her, smiling brightly, and says that after giving it a lot of thought, she has a question for Lady Tiara. Tiaros silently wonders what Akari intends to do. Akari then asks Tiaros if she has also played this game before. Tiaros is stunned, as this confirms her suspicion that Lady Akari is reincarnated, just like her. Lady Akari explains her reasoning, showing visions of Prince Heartknights, older brother Mowgli's, Lord Cliff, and even an instructor. She states that every single one of them followed the game's original storyline, and Lady Tiara was the only person who acted differently from the game. Akari complains that she did not get her happy ending. As Tiaros listens, she understands that Akari has concluded she must also be a reincarnated person because she changed the game's ending. Tiaros privately thinks Akari is mistaken and has no solid evidence, especially since Tiaros' own candy pink hair and clear blue eyes look just like a game character's. Tiaros decides to feign ignorance and politely tells Lady Akari that she is afraid she doesn't understand what she is saying. Akari says it is all right for Tiaros to pretend and laments that while she will finally marry Prince Heartknights and find happiness, she was so surprised when Prince Aqua, her true favorite character, appeared. Tiaros guesses that Akari has come to tell her to break up with Prince Aqua. Akari explains that since Prince Aqua was from the sequel, she thought she had to make do with Prince Heartknights, who was only her second favorite. She exclaims that if she had known Prince Aqua was an option, he would have been her ideal choice. Akari then smiles, glad that Tiara Rose fell for her trick and confirmed her suspicions. She realizes that Tiara Rose must not know anything about the sequel, such as Prince Aqua's events or the heroine in Marine Forest. Tiara Rose is confused, so Akari explains that she was reincarnated and has memories of playing this game when she was Japanese. Akari then presses Tiara Rose, asking if she was also Japanese in her past life. Akari follows up, asking if Tiara Rose died without ever playing the sequel. Tiara Rose quietly admits, "That's right." Akari is completely horrified, covering her mouth and muttering, "Unbelievable." Tiara Rose, now annoyed, tells her to just leave it. Tiara Rose closes her eyes, thinking that now, more than ever, she truly wishes she had played the sequel. She imagines all the beautiful CGs and heart-throbbing events she must have missed, especially collecting all of Prince Aqua's CGs. Suddenly, Akari grabs her hand. Tiara Rose is shocked as Akari bursts into comical sobs. Akari grabs Tiara Rose and shakes her, crying about how pitiful it is that Lady Tiara never played the sequel. She insists there is no other Otome game as wonderful as this one, declaring that while Prince Heart Knights is dreamy, Prince Aqua is way dreamier. She excitedly explains that the sequel's heroine is a duke's daughter in Marine Forest named Aishira. She describes a so-romantic CG scene where Prince Aqua meets Aishira by the sea after getting fed up with his fiancée. Akari then complains that Tiara Rose has a stable life, unlike her, who had to rise from being a commoner, and wishes she had been reincarnated as the sequel's heroine, leaving Tiara Rose looking exhausted. Tiara Rose pushes Akari away and asks why she really came here, while privately thinking she still wants to know more about the sequel heroine, Aishira. Akari's demeanor changes completely. She reminds Tiara Rose that it has been decided she will be engaged to Prince Heart Knights, which Tiara Rose confirms she knows. Akari then smiles and reveals her trump card. She can use the power of the Holy Prayer. She asks if Tiara Rose understands the significance of this power, confidently stating that if she informs her beloved Prince Aqua of this, she can marry him without any problems. Tiara Rose gasps in shock. Tiara Rose's mind races, realizing Prince Aqua probably already knows about Akari's power. She reflects on her earlier conversation with him, recalling that he only said an engagement between Akari and Heart Knights was decided and that Heart Knights was no longer the heir. He never mentioned why Akari was made his fiancée. She wonders if he was just being considerate, or if he truly doesn't know. Akari then demands that Tiara Rose break up with Prince Aqua. She argues it should be easy since Tiara Rose never played the sequel and has no emotional attachment to him, unlike Akari, who has played his route countless times. Tiara Rose clenches her fist, angrily telling Akari she is being ridiculous. She declares that Prince Aqua is not a game character but a living, breathing human being, and that Akari is ignoring his wishes. Akari just scoffs, saying, "Obviously I get that." Tiara Rose is left speechless as Akari continues, saying Prince Aqua is royalty and she bears the Holy Prayer's power. She claims it is common sense in this world for them to marry and that the crown prince will certainly decide he must have her. Tiara Rose thinks that while that might be true, she has no intention of backing down. She counters by asking if Akari isn't already engaged to Prince Heart Knights. Akari dismisses this, saying the king decided it arbitrarily and she has not agreed to it. She reveals her plan to inform Prince Aqua of her power, receive his protection, travel to Marine Forest with him, and then get married. Tiara Rose thinks it wouldn't be easy to escape, but Akari ignores the complications and reaches out her hand. Suddenly, Akari attacks Tiara Rose with a slice of magic, causing her to cry out. A jolt of energy crackles and paralyzes Tiara Rose. She tries to stop it but finds her own power won't come. She realizes it is futile to use defensive magic because the disparity in their power is just too vast. Akari smiles as Tiara Rose cries out, explaining her new scenario where Lady Tiara is injured and her engagement is broken. Akari gathers crackling energy in her hand, declaring that she is the heroine and is bound to get her happy ending. Tiara Rose knows she cannot turn her back. Akari tells her not to worry, as she will merely fall into a months-long coma, for the sake of her and Prince Aqua's happiness. She asks Tiara Rose to cooperate and then unleashes her attack, shouting, "Lightning, strike forth!" Tiara Rose screams, but the attack is stopped by a magical barrier that suddenly appears. Tiara Rose is stunned, knowing a barrier that strong is beyond her own power, and she wonders who saved her. Prince Aquasteed is suddenly behind her, pulling her into a protective embrace. He says, "It seems like I made it in time. Tiara Rose is overcome with relief, crying out his name. In the doorway, her father, the Marquis, and Elliot have also arrived. Aquasteed holds Tiara Rose's face, apologizing for not making it in time as he sees she is hurt. Tiara Rose cries, telling him not to look so sad and insisting that she would have been gravely injured if he hadn't saved her. Aquasteed clenches his fist, angry that she was hurt at all. Akari, in the background, is shocked, wondering why he is even in the castle. The Marquis demands an explanation from Lady Akari, and Elliot explains that an excellent attendant warned him Akari had teleported into Tiara Rose's room. Akari realizes she has been caught and immediately changes her story. She pleads with Prince Aqua, announcing that the holy prayer has awakened in her but that she is being forced into an engagement with Prince Heart Knights. She begs Prince Aqua to save her and take her to his kingdom. The Marquis shouts that she is speaking nonsense, but Akari tells him to shut up as she is speaking to the prince. Tiara Rose's heart pounds with fear, worried that Aquasteed will choose Akari and return to his kingdom with only her. She grips his coat, thinking, "You can't." Prince Aquasteed calmly strokes Tiara Rose's hair and tells Akari, "I already knew." A heavy silence fills the room. Akari, stunned, asks why he didn't make her his fiancée in that case. Aquasteed, standing with Tiara Rose, states clearly that he is well aware of her power but tells her not to underestimate him. He says he does not need the holy prayer to make his kingdom flourish. He then declares, "Therefore, I do not need Lady Akari." He smiles gently at Tiara Rose, adding, "I already have Tiara," and states he has no interest in any woman other than her. Tiara Rose looks up at him, her eyes full of emotion. Akari begins to shake, muttering in disbelief that he doesn't need the power every country covets. Aquasteed ignores her and kisses Tiara Rose's forehead, apologizing for being slow to rescue her. Akari collapses, devastated that she wasn't chosen. Guards rush into the room, and Aquasteed orders them to seize her. They place a magic suppressor on her wrist and lead her away. Aquasteed holds Tiara Rose, thinking that the cost of losing her would far outweigh any benefit from marrying Akari. He asks Tiara Rose if she has any other injuries. She leans into him, blushing, and says she is fine thanks to him, noting her cheek is just a graze. He insists on getting it treated right away. Then, he gently lifts her into a bridal carry, telling her to stay like this. He says it is all right for her to be pampered after what just happened. Tiara Rose thinks he is so kind, and though she feels embarrassed, she is also very happy. She reflects that all this time, as the villainous daughter, she was terrified of her fated banishment. She was afraid of acting selfishly and being hated by Prince Aqua. But now, her mind is finally at ease. Prince Aqua has declared he will not choose Akari, and the me that he has chosen is simply brimming over with happiness. A white tower that stands by a beautiful, vast lake in the kingdom of Lapis Lazuli. This tower was built to confine members of the aristocracy, and magic is suppressed within its walls. It is a secret place known only to a few of the kingdom's most powerful citizens. Inside, Lady Akari wonders why she is there, angrily complaining about having to stay in such a place. She sits with her chin on her hands, thinking that she should have received a much harsher punishment. She realizes her sentence was lightened because of her holy prayer and, surprisingly, because Lady Tiara requested it. A flashback shows Tiara Rose sitting on a sofa next to Prince Aquasteed, with Philin standing in the background. Tiara Rose explains to her father that she fortunately did not sustain any serious injuries, and because of this, she does not wish for Akari to receive a severe punishment. Her father simply says, "If that's what you want." Tiara Rose thinks to herself that Akari is the only other person who played the Otome game, and she is grateful that Akari told her the name of the sequel's heroine. Back in the tower, Akari looks out the window, thinking she would be better off using her magic to teleport far away. She feels dejected, noting that Prince Aqua rejected her and Prince Heart Knights barely seems to care about her. She wonders how things ended up this way when she is the heroine. She knows she can only use a small amount of magic because of the suppressor on her wrist. She is limited to simple things like conjuring a small light, creating a glass of water, and cooling the air. She suspects there are probably more things she can do, but she doesn't understand her powers well enough. Akari sees that the entrance is bolted with a special lock and knights are stationed everywhere to keep watch. She knows she will be noticed immediately if she tries anything and concludes it is impossible for her to escape the tower by herself. She sighs, thinking that if this were an Otome, a prince would come to her rescue. She wishes Prince Heart Knights at least were here. Then, she has a sudden realization, this is an Otome. She looks up and sees Prince Heartknights himself entering her room. Akari smiles brightly, holding a tin of cookies, and welcomes him, offering to prepare his favorite black tea. He declines, saying he won't be staying long. Akari turns to the window, holding the tin, and says she has so much free time she doesn't know what to do, but she still wants to serve him. He just says her name, Akari. He informs her that it has already been decided that they are to marry and assist the second prince, Sirius, so she cannot object. He remarks that she agreed surprisingly meekly, as he had expected her to still be pining for Prince Aquasteed. Akari replies that since he won't be rescuing her, he should at least join her for tea. As she serves the tea, Akari admits that after Prince Aqua's rejection, everyone thinks she likes him, and it's true. She says it's the inevitable truth, even if people call her shameless. Then she tells Prince Heartknights he is mistaken about something. She looks at him and confesses, "I really like you, Prince Heartknights." He is stunned, thinking to himself that he had always believed her heart wasn't his. Akari looks puzzled by his reaction. Prince Heartknights turns away from her as a tear forms in his eye. He thinks what a self-centered girl she is to say such things despite liking Prince Aquasteed. He clenches his fist, admitting to himself that even so, he feels happy. He abruptly stands and says he is leaving. Akari is shocked, asking why he is leaving when he just got there. As he walks away from the tower, Prince Heartknights thinks that if he had stayed, who knows what he might have said. He wonders if it all turned out this way because Akari was the heroine and he was her love interest. The scene changes to the day of departure to Marine Forest. Tiara Rose is outside the mansion, saying goodbye to her parents and Philin. A carriage is waiting. Her mother tells her to take care, and her father adds that she should contact them if she needs anything. Tiara Rose smiles, telling them not to worry and that she is truly happy now. She thinks about the long 20-day journey and how they plan to rest at a town on the way. She glances at Prince Aquasteed, thinking that the next time they return, it will be in a year for their wedding reception. The Marquis bows to Prince Aquasteed, entrusting him with his daughter. Aquasteed tells him not to bow and promises to treasure Tiara Rose and make her happy, saying she already brings him so much joy. Tiara Rose blushes at his words. An attendant then announces they are ready to depart. Tiara Rose shares a tearful hug with Philin, who says she will be lonely. Tiara Rose promises to bring back gifts and thinks that it feels a little lonely, even if it's not goodbye forever. She then teases her father, noting it's the first time she has seen him cry. He sniffs and tells her to hurry up and go before it gets dark. The Marquis also wishes Philin well, who bows and promises to support Tiara Rose properly. As the carriage departs, Tiara Rose's family and the servants wave goodbye. Tiara Rose thinks her heart is racing in a way that feels different from usual. Inside the carriage, Tiara Rose feels nervous being alone with the prince. Aquasteed breaks the silence, telling her it will take 6 days to reach the border town and that the changing scenery will be beautiful. Tiara Rose says she is excited, as she has heard that Marine Forest has fairies, unlike her own kingdom. Aquasteed smiles, saying he is sure Tiara will be blessed by them. An illustration shows different kinds of fairies, and text explains that if a person is blessed, they can receive gifts like new magical powers. Tiara Rose thinks about Marine Forest, a beautiful land of seas and forests that girls dream of visiting. She reflects that she knows very little about it, as she only learned Prince Aqua was in the sequel but nothing more. As the carriage continues, she looks out the window, thinking of her parents and feeling very blessed. Prince Aquasteed gently holds her face and gives her a deep kiss. He pulls back to ask if she is all right and she smiles, saying, yes. He pulls her into a hug, telling her she is really way too cute. Tiara Rose blushes and leans against him, happily thinking, dote on me. Suddenly, a bright light flashes inside the carriage, startling them both. A letter magically appears, addressed to Lady Tiara Rose, in cute, bubbly handwriting. Tiara Rose is confused, noting this kind of magic requires great power. Prince Aquasteed immediately takes the letter, saying it looks suspicious and he needs to check it. Tiara Rose protests, worried it might be dangerous or could explode. He pats her head, telling her not to worry, and after checking it, he says it seems to be just a letter from Lady Akari. Tiara Rose is shocked, wondering if Akari still hasn't given up. Prince Aquasteed reads the letter, which shows Akari writing from the tower. She writes that her magic can only be used for sending letters, and that she will work hard to be happy with Prince Heartknights. She ends by telling Lady Tiara that she must also be happy. Tiara Rose gasps, while Aquasteed comments that this is all way too convenient. Tiara Rose, however, smiles brightly and asks if she can keep the letter. Aquasteed is surprised, asking if she doesn't dislike Akari after everything she did. He agrees, and Tiara Rose is thrilled as she can read the secret message written in Japanese. I won't forgive you if you lose to the sequel's heroine. She understands this is Akari's unique way of cheering her on. Tiara Rose holds the letter and tells Aquastide she will use it as a source of encouragement when she feels depressed. He looks puzzled but agrees. Tiara Rose, full of new determination, thinks to herself that she will not lose to the sequel's heroine. As their journey continues, two shadowy figures are seen elsewhere. One comments that the crown prince has returned, while the other snickers, wondering what kind of girl he brought back with him.